I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar for the automatic entry processing for the commodities expansion. My name's Nick Housego. I'll be your facilitator for the webinar today. The webinar is mandatory continued biosecurity competency session for accredited persons under the AEPCOMM approved arrangements. The main objective of this webinar is to provide you with information regarding the expansion of the AEPCOMM scope for this year and to familiarise you with updates to the policy documents. One of the panel members will go through the specific webinar outcomes a little bit later on. We'll be recording today's webinar, and a copy of the recording will be made available through the CBC Activities link on the Department's Training and Accreditation for Approved Arrangements webpage later on today for those who are unable to join now, or if you wish to recheck the information at some stage. We will also take some of your questions as we go through the webinar, so feel free to post those on the Q&A box at the bottom of the screens. We recommend you have access to the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy, version 9.0, and the Approved Commodities and Related Information for Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage ready as we go through the webinar. As this is a mandatory CBC session, there will be an assessment component to it. The assessment will be available straight after the webinar through your CBC provider. Please contact them to access the material. Also note that you will need to access the Requirements and Conditions document, version 9.0, the new webpage, and your BICON AEPCOMM user access account to complete the assessment. We need to stress that, as per last year, you are required to successfully complete the training, including the webinar and assessment, prior to the lodging of any new commodities through AEPCOMM. Lodgement of the new commodities through AEPCOMM approved arrangements prior to successfully completing your assessment will be considered non-compliance. As you can see from the table on the slide, you have until the 21st of September 2020 to undertake the assessment. The new commodities are available in the system as from today. Now, with all the information out of the way, I'd like to introduce you to our panel members for the session. 3 members will present the webinar for you, and they will be Katya Guerra, Nicola Wise and Kym Louis. And behind the scenes, we'll also have an AEP expert, Angus Martin, who will be managing your questions. All panel members are from the Department's Compliance Division. Some are in Canberra, some are in Brisbane. We welcome to each of you. So let's get started by going through the specific outcomes for this session.
Thanks, Nick. We have 3 main learning outcomes for today's webinar. These are listed on the slide. The first outcome is for the accredited person to demonstrate an understanding of the changes to the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy. The second outcome is for the accredited person to demonstrate awareness of how AEPCOMM has been expanded and the new commodities added to the scope. Our last outcome is for the accredited person to demonstrate an ability to utilise and interpret the required resources for processing new commodities under the AEPCOMM approved arrangement. We would also like to take the opportunity to provide an update in the area of electronic certification, or eCert.
Okay, let's go on to our first topic. Changes to the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy.
Thanks, Nick. First, we'd like to mention that in general, wording in some of the conditions has changed. However, the intent of those conditions have remained the same. But if you would like more details about changes to the conditions, please note that we have published a comparison guide on our automatic entry processing reform webpage for you to access. Due to feedback from within the department and to align with biosecurity legislation, we have made some updates to the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy. Additionally, we have removed Appendix 2, what used to be the in-scope commodities and related information, from the main policy document, and transferred the information onto a web page with the purpose of displaying the information in a more user-friendly way and to provide better support to the accredited person. Okay, let's have a look at the updated Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions document. The first change that we would like to point out refers to the prerequisite requirements section of the document. As mentioned before, to align with biosecurity legislation, prerequisites 4 and 5 have now become operating conditions 9 and 10, and this has resulted in a renumbering of conditions from condition 9 onwards. The document now has 3 prerequisites for approval and 28 conditions in total. Another key change to the policy includes the rewording of conditions 11 and 17. These were conditions 9 and 15 in the previous version. Let's have a look at condition 11 first. It reads, accredited persons must determine if the commodity is in scope of the approved arrangement and must only enter an AEPCOMM code if the commodity is in scope at the time of lodging the import declaration. This is achieved by referring to the approved commodities and related information for Class 19.2 AEPCOMM approved arrangement webpage. So this is the webpage containing the information from the previous Appendix 2 and the approved AEPCOMM pathways in BICON using your AEPCOMM user access. If the scope of AEPCOMM is changed, the Department will update both resources and the changes will be communicated to biosecurity industry participants through an industry advice notice. Information added to this condition refers to the resources an accredited person needs to refer to for determining the correct AEPCOMM code for commodities in scope of the approved arrangement. Now let's look at condition 17. Accredited persons must enter information in the import declaration to ensure that the automated direction manages the biosecurity risk in accordance with BICON. This must be achieved by entering the following information in the Integrated Cargo System, ICS. 1. Entering the AEPCOMM code as specified in the BICON onshore outcomes against the relevant line in the AEP processing type field. 2. Entering the Agriculture Commodity Code, ACC, if required, as specified in the BICON onshore outcomes against the relevant line in the AQUIS Commodity Code field. And 3, entering an approved arrangement site number into the AQUIS premise ID field to ensure that a location is assigned to the biosecurity direction. As you know, the approved arrangement site must be an appropriate class to perform the directed biosecurity activity as listed in the BICON onshore outcomes. Information added to this condition is in relation to determining and entering key lodgement information such as the AEPCOMM code and the ACC code into the relevant fields in the ICS. Changes to the condition have been made with the objective of providing more detailed information on what is expected when using AEPCOMM. Please contact the Department if you have any questions regarding the above changes. Now, over to you, Katya, to talk about removal of Appendix 2 from the policy document.
Hi Nick, it's Angus here. I've just got a live question to answer from Sam. Sam's just asked if there are any future plans for industry members to be undertaking inspections or other activities as trusted operators as opposed to booking a DAWE officer per shipment. Just to answer that question, there are plans within the broader approved arrangements for those type of activities, and we can take that question offline and refer it to our approved arrangements section for a fuller response. But yeah, thanks for your question, Sam, and back over to you, Nick. Thanks.
Okay, so Katya?
All right. So as mentioned before, another major change we would like to point out is the transfer of the information that used to be contained on Appendix 2 from the main policy document to the Department's website. We anticipate that the new webpage will provide better support to accredited persons as information is presented in a more user-friendly format. So commodity groups will be listed in alphabetical order, and commodity group headings are collapsible to make the information easier to view and find. Commodity information will list applicable BICON cases as hyperlinks that will direct you straight to the relevant BICON case for that commodity, as seen here. Please ensure you are using your BICON AEPCOMM user access to view AEPCOMM related information before clicking on those links. Hyperlinks to other important web pages, such as BMSB information, have also been included. Other information listed on the webpage are conditions that you should pay particular attention to when lodging the import declaration, as shown here for condition 17. This refers to information that may be required in the system for that commodity group, depending on the documentation you are basing your assessment on. For example, it will point to ECERT details, AEI numbers, and ACC codes, as seen on the slide. Please note this information is to be considered in reference to the full Class 19.2 requirements and conditions policy, as stated on the web page. These extra details have been included on this web page to prompt you and assist you in complying with your obligations. This means that the conditions listed on the web page are listed as a guide only, and the full set of conditions of the approved arrangement still apply if relevant to the lodgement. Something else that you will notice is that in-scope tariff tables now list tariff numbers only, as the goods descriptions were removed from the tables after consultation with industry representatives. This will provide you with a simpler and more condensed view of the in-scope information. We do have some short tutorials that will demonstrate the assessment process later on in the webinar. These tutorials will be ongoing resources that will be available for you on our website. We also need to mention that we have updated our compliance classification guide for broker class approved arrangements. As you know, the document provides guidance on how to comply with individual conditions, and you should be referring to it if you're not clear on a particular condition. The compliance classification guide can be accessed through our requirements for operating approved arrangements webpage under Class 19. Changes to the compliance classification guide have been made to reflect the changes to the requirements and conditions document. There has been no change to the classification of conditions which are mainly monitored through document assessment verification. We have, however, taken the opportunity to reclassify conditions which are not relevant to document assessment verification activities. These conditions will now show managed under approved arrangement general policies on the compliance classification column. This means that any non-compliance under these conditions will not be classed as critical, major, or minor, and they will be managed in accordance with approved arrangement general policies. For example, for condition 23, it requires the biosecurity industry participant to ensure that biosecurity directions generated by AIMS are carried out or arranged to be carried out within the designated AIMS direction timeframe. As this condition is not monitored through document assessment verification, the condition has been reclassified as previously mentioned. This means that the department may take action according to the approved arrangement general policies. This could include written advice, a corrective action request for more serious non-compliance. The department may trigger a show cause process to suspend or revoke the arrangement. Please ensure that you are familiar with this document and understand the compliance expectation for each condition.
Thank you very much, Katya. Our next session will cover the expansion of AEPCOMM. Nicola, I'm going to pass over to yourself.
Thanks, Nick. So similar to last year's AEPCOMM expansion, this year we have added new commodity groups and subgroups to the scope, as well as expanded existing groups by adding new tariffs or cargo types. In this section, we will be focusing on what is new in the scope of AEPCOMM, and later on we will play some video tutorials to illustrate the assessment process for some of our new commodities. So here is a summary of what has been added. Hops, dried willow wickerwork articles, permitted plant fibre products, fertiliser, gum products, prepared cereals and muesli bars, and pasta. We have also expanded the following existing commodity groups, and we'll go through what has changed soon. Highly processed and manufactured wooden articles, highly refined organic chemicals and substances, and unfinished timber and timber products. Okay, so let's go through these in more detail and in the order they appear on our new approved commodities webpage. In this expansion, we have created a commodity group named Brewing Products. This will include the subgroup starter cultures, which is already an existing commodity. However, we have added a new subgroup for hops. This subgroup includes hops for processing or processed hops that have been made into pellets or extracts. Similarly, for our cane, rattan and bamboo articles group has been expanded to include subgroups dried willow wicker articles and permitted plant fibres. The dried willow and wicker articles subgroup includes dried willow wicker articles that are free of bark and have been treated correctly overseas. In other words, you can use AEPCOMM for willow wicker articles that meet all requirements. We need to mention here that due to the permitted plant fibres BICON case currently being updated by the department, lodgements of products containing permitted plant fibres through AEPCOMM are not currently available. The department will notify industry via industry advice notice when this commodity becomes available. The permitted plant fibres subgroup includes products containing permitted plant fibres that are highly processed or treated as defined by BICON and that are incapable of propagation. These two subgroups will require the use of an ACC code for lodgement. The BICON onshore outcomes will indicate that an ACC code is required, DWWA and PMTD respectively, and this must also be entered in the system for the lodgement. Our next commodity group is fertiliser. This commodity group is new and it includes solid fertilisers made of mines and chemical ingredients only. The product can be bagged or loose. However, only containerised fertiliser is in scope of the approved arrangement. This includes fertilisers classed as risk level 1, 2 or 3. The ACC codes need to be entered for this group will be FTR1 and FTR2 for fertiliser risk 1 and 2 respectively. There will be no need to enter an ACC code for fertiliser that is classed as risk level 3. You'll also notice that we have modified Community Protection Profile questions, or CP questions, associated with fertiliser tariffs. It is important that you read them carefully and answer them correctly, as the answers will identify loose or bagged products for the system to apply inspection directions appropriately. The highly processed and manufactured wooden articles group has been expanded to include some tariffs listed on the table of highly processed wooden products in BICON. These include articles from tariff chapters 49, 82, 92 and 97, such as frames, pictures and paintings, hand tools and cutlery. I'll now hand over to Katya to go through the last few new commodities and some commodity group expansions.
I think Angus, you've got a question there?
Yeah, I have, thanks, Katya. I've got a question from David just around fertiliser, and it is, does the expansion into fertiliser products expand into gypsum and those products not classified within 3102 and 3105? Just to answer that, at this stage, no, it is only including the tariff chapters which are included on the webpage. And yeah, but we're always looking for opportunities to expand, and we can look into that at a later date if there's a need there. So back over to you, Katya. Thank you.
Thanks, Angus. Okay, so just following from what Nicola was talking about in regards to the expansion, we also have the highly refined organic chemicals and substances group. This has also been changed. So this group now includes two subgroups. The highly refined organic chemicals and substances, which has been expanded to include more tariffs, and the gum product subgroup, which includes highly processed gum products other than for fertilizer or animal feed. Here too, new CP questions have been associated with tariffs in scope of the approved arrangement to ensure that high-risk products are scoped out, such as highly refined organic chemicals to be used for stock feed, pet food, fertilizer and veterinary use, or agar to support the growth of microorganisms in plant material. Another new commodity group is the prepared and retail packaged food products for human consumption. This group includes two subgroups: the prepared cereals and muesli bars, which includes commercially prepared and retail packaged breakfast cereal, muesli bars, whole food bars, meals and flour mixes, couscous meals, and fruit and seed trail mixes containing plant material only. And we also have the pasta subgroup, which includes commercially prepared and retail packaged pasta, spaghetti, instant noodles, including egg noodles, containing plant-based ingredients only and or containing less than 10% egg or dairy. And lastly, our unfinished timber and timber products commodity group has been expanded to include break bulk cargo, and this is only for pathways that were already in scope of this group, such as timber from non-pathogen risk species from all countries, and timber from pathogen risk species accompanied by an e-cert from New Zealand. Over to you, Nick.
Katya, thank you very much. Okay, as mentioned by Nicola earlier, we have 3 short tutorial videos that we will be playing for you next. These are in relation to the assessment process for some of the new commodities added to the scope of AEPCOMM. Please remember that the lodgement process has not changed. However, we would like to get familiar with using the updated resources and new commodities added to the scope. The panel will be taking some of your questions at the end of each video, so if there is something you would like to ask in relation to those commodities or the lodgement process, please post those on the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. As mentioned before, all tutorials will be uploaded on the department's website later on for you to access when required. In preparation for the upcoming brown marmorated stink bug, or BMSB season, a video tutorial to assist you with lodging commodities subject to BMSB measures through AEPCOMM will also be uploaded on the same webpage. Please be reminded that the department also has help cards available for various AEP processes, including BMSB lodgements, on their AEP reform page. We are interested in your feedback on the video tutorials as a learning resource. Please let us know if you would like to see them for other commodity groups. Feedback regarding the tutorials or any other questions for the new commodities or the assessments can be sent to aepsupport@awe.gov.au. This next section will cover our third outcome for today, which is for the accredited persons to demonstrate an ability to utilise and interpret the required resources for processing new commodities under the AEPCOMM approved arrangements. Yes,
Sorry, Nick, it's Angus here. Can I just answer a quick question before we start this video tutorial?
Of course, go for it.
Sure, it's just from Lev. I'm just asking, could you please verify once more that the newly added tariffs for the highly processed wooden articles, was it 92 or should it be 94? Just to confirm, that's 92, chapter 92. So just confirming that one, and happy to hand back to you, Nick.
Okay, so let's look at the dried willow wicker articles and permitted plant fibres tutorial. Automatic entry processing for commodities, AEPCOMM, video tutorial for the subgroups dried willow and wicker articles and permitted plant fibres. We recommend that while watching this tutorial you have access to essential resources such as the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy, the approved commodities and related information for the Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage, and BICON AEPCOMM user access. Dried willow wicker articles and permitted plant fibres belong to the same commodity group. Cane and rattan articles, dried wickerwork, permitted plant fibres and bamboo products. In this video we will focus on the subgroups dried willow wicker articles and permitted plant fibres. The lodgement process for these two subgroups is very similar. Let's have a look at the dried willow wicker articles. This subgroup includes dried willow wicker articles that are free of bark and have a valid offshore treatment certificate. This includes any of the valid treatment options as listed in BICON, such as methyl bromide, heat treatment, ethylene oxide, gamma irradiation, boiling water, and sulfuryl fluoride. Consignments under this subgroup cannot be directed for onshore treatment through AEPCOMM. Similarly, products containing permitted plant fibres must be highly processed or treated offshore, as stipulated by BICON, and must also be incapable of propagation to be lodged through AEPCOMM. Permitted plant fibres only includes fibres from specific plant species. Therefore, it is crucial that the accredited person verifies if the material is listed as permitted in BICON. Please note that sun drying or air drying is not regarded as sufficient processing. Let's have a look at the example for willow wicker articles. You have an air freight consignment of Christmas wreaths made of willow wicker from Laos, tariff 4602.90.00.12. You are in possession of valid non-commodity documentation, a manufacturer's declaration that complies with BICON, and the MinDoc requirements policy stating the commodity is free of bark, and a methyl bromide fumigation certificate that meets all requirements, including having been issued by acceptable offshore treatment provider and stating the correct methyl bromide treatment rate, 48 grams per cubic metre for 24 hours above 21 degrees Celsius. Let's go to the approved commodities and related information for Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage. You need to refer to the dry willow and wicker article subgroup within the cane and rattan articles, dried wickerwork, permitted plant fibres and bamboo products section. This section specifies that the BICON case containing in-scope pathways for this commodity subgroup is the dried willow and wicker articles case. This information also states that this subgroup includes dried willow wicker articles containing no bark and accompanied by a valid offshore treatment certificate. This consignment fits into this description. Now we check the tariff is in scope of the approved arrangement. Yes, it is. It fits under 4602. The information on the webpage will also list the other conditions you may need to draw your attention to in relation to the lodgement. In this case, it alerts you to the conditions 17 and 18 in relation to entering ACC and AEI information into the systems. Now let's go to the dried willow and wicker articles BICON case to verify the import pathway is in scope of the AEPCOMM and determine the AEPCOMM code to enter the system. Please remember, AEPCOMM information is only visible through your AEPCOMM user account. Now, you would follow the import pathway by answering the import questions according to the scenario. The BICON offshore outcomes indicates all requirements have been met and the goods may be released from biosecurity control. The AEPCOMM section displays the AEPCOMM code REL. This code needs to be entered against the relevant line in the AEP processing type field of the Integrated Cargo System, or ICS. Additionally, BICON indicates that this subgroup also requires you to enter the ACC code DWWA for dried willow wicker articles. In the Aquas Commodity Code field in the ICS, as the consignment was accompanied by a valid offshore methyl bromide treatment certificate, the treatment provider's AEI number must also be entered into the Aquas Entity ID field in the ICS. Similarly, BICON will indicate an ACC code PMTD for permitted is required when lodging articles containing permitted plant fibres through AEPCOMM. Once the lodgement is completed, and if the import declaration is not selected for a document assessment verification by the system, the Agriculture Import Management System, or AIMS, will generate a release notice and email to your company's nominated address. If you have any AEP related questions, please contact AEP support awe.gov.au. Okay, that was nice and brief. We hope these short tutorials provide you with a good understanding of the process. Now, we'll take some of your questions. Angus, your first question that you've got?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here that came in. First one is, what happens if I forget to enter an ACC code for the permitted plant fibres commodity group? If you don't enter the ACC code, then the AEP system will generate an AEP processing error, which means that it won't be a successful lodgement through AEP, and you'll need to present documents through Coles for those that input to be assessed. So it's very important that when assessing permitted plant fibres, you enter that ACC code as directed in BICON. The next question was around permitted plant fibres as well. Why aren't products containing permitted plant fibres available now? That's due to our import program, plant import operations. They're currently doing an update to that BICON case and around making the definition around highly processed more clearer for industry participants and the importers, so that when goods are assessed, there's no confusion around what is highly processed. That update is being progressed at the moment, so we're expecting to go through fairly soon. Once it is updated in BICOM, we'll send out an industry advice notice and let everyone know that it's then available for AEPCOM. Okay, and I think that's all the questions we have at this stage. Thanks, Nick.
Angus, thank you. We'll keep an eye on those questions as we keep rolling through. Okay, our next tutorial is fertilisers. Automatic entry processing for commodities, AEPCOMM video tutorial for fertilisers. We recommend that while watching this tutorial you have access to essential resources such as the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy, the Approved Commodities and Related Information for Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage, and BICON AEPCOMM User Access. When performing an assessment of fertiliser, it is critical that the accredited person is able to determine the risk level rating that the consignment has been classified under. This rating is provided to the manufacturer by the Department's Bulk Commodity National Coordination Centre, NCC. Evidence of the risk level rating can be a copy of the certificate provided by Bulk Commodity NCC or stated on the manufacturer's declaration. The Import Conditions section of BICON will alert you to this. Risk level rating evidence is required to be provided to the Department if the lodgement is selected by the system for assessment verification to avoid non-compliance. The accredited person will indicate the risk level classification by entering the ACC code when lodging the import declaration. Only risk levels 1 and 2 require an ACC code. Risk level 3 will not require an ACC code to be entered. Assigning the correct ACC code is critical to ensure the consignment is managed in accordance with the BICON outcomes. If the accredited person does not have evidence of the risk level rating, then AEPCOMM must not be utilised and documents should be presented to the Department for assessment. Let's have a look at an example. You have a consignment of 4 FCLs of solid mineral fertiliser from China. Tariff 3104.30.00.18. The fertiliser is packed in 1,000 kilogram bags. You are in possession of a valid non-commodity documentation, evidence of the risk level rating issued by the Department's Bulk Commodity NCC for risk level 2, and a manufacturer's declaration as prescribed in BICON. Let's go to the Approved Commodities and Related Information for Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage. You need to refer to the fertiliser section of the webpage. This section specifies the BICON case containing in-scope pathways for this commodity group is the fertilisers case. The information also states that this group includes solid fertilisers containing mined and chemical ingredients only. These could be chemical or synthetic ingredients. Fertiliser classed as risk level 1, 2 or 3. Fertilisers that are bagged or loose in an FCL or a FCX container. This consignment fits into this description. Now we check the tariff is in scope of the approved arrangements. Yes, it is. It fits under 3104. The information on the webpage will also list other conditions you may need to draw your attention to in relation to the lodgement. In this case, it alerts you to the condition 17 in relation to entering ACC codes into the system. Now let's go to the fertilisers BICON case to verify the import pathway is in scope of AEPCOMM and determine the AEPCOMM code to enter into the system. Please remember, AEPCOMM information is only visible through your AEPCOMM user account. Now you would follow the import pathway by answering the import questions according to the scenario. We are in possession of all required documentations, including risk level evidence. The BICON offshore outcomes indicates an inspection is required. The AEPCOMM section displays that the AEPCOMM code INS. This code needs to be entered against the relevant line in the AEP processing type field of the Integrated Cargo System or ICS. Additionally, BICON indicates that this subgroup also requires you to enter the ACC code FTR2 for Fertiliser Risk Category 2. In the Aquis Commodity Code field in the ICS, as mentioned before, the ACC code is a critical field for managing fertilisers classified at risk levels 1 and 2 adequately. As you are expecting an inspection direction to be generated by the system, you are also required to enter an appropriate AA site number, as shown here, in the Aquis Premises ID field in the ICS. When lodging the import declaration, you also need to ensure that you answer community protection profile questions in relation to the type and packaging of the fertiliser accurately, as the appropriate answer will allow the system to process the declaration correctly through AEPCOMM. Once the lodgement is completed, and if the import declaration is not selected for a document assessment verification by the system, the Agriculture Import Management System, or AIMS, will generate an inspection direction and email it to your company's nominated address. If you have an AEP related question, please contact AEP support at awe.gov.au. Okay, questions coming in now from fertiliser. Angus, what's come into your inbox?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I've had quite a few questions come in, which is great. First one is, what happens if I make a mistake or forget to enter the ACC code to indicate the risk level rating for the fertiliser? So what will happen in that scenario is the system will generate outcomes for risk level 3, which is a higher level of intervention to what is required for risk level 1 and 2, where an ACC code is required. So it is very important when lodging a fertiliser on AEPCOMM that you indicate that risk level rating and apply that ACC code, via the ACC code, and that will be available on the BICON onshore outcome. So that was that question. Moving on to the next one. Is there an ACC code for risk level 3 fertiliser? No, as discussed before, that's sort of like our default level where you just need to enter the inspection code. However, you need to make sure that it's not risk level 1 or 2, otherwise you will get directions which aren't applicable for your consignment. The third one, what if an importer assures me that the fertiliser is risk level 1 or 2, but I don't have the documentary evidence in the form of a certificate or MANDEC? In that case, you need to lodge documents to the department for assessment. The documentary evidence via a certificate or as stated on the manufacturer's declaration is required in order to determine that risk level, and you'll need to have that documentary evidence if the consignment is selected for verification. Otherwise, it could be considered would be considered as non-compliance if you don't have that evidence of non-compliance. There's one here from Will here. Will ASG be undertaking this training as there is little consistency in their interpretation? Yes, well, all these tutorials will be made available to our staff as well, so obviously they can view what information is being shown to our industry participants, and yeah, they'll perform their assessments in accordance with BICON as is required for our industry participants. So yeah, back over to you, Nick. Thank you.
That was a good pick-up question. Well done on that one. Okay, now we need to have a look at the highly refined and organic chemicals and substances and gum products tutorial. Automatic Entry Processing for Commodities, AEPCOMM, video tutorial for highly refined organic chemicals and substances and gum products. We recommend that while watching this tutorial you have access to essential resources such as the Class 19.2 Requirements and Conditions Policy, the approved commodities and related information for the Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage, and BICON AEPCOMM User Access. The highly refined organic materials and substance commodity group includes two subgroups: the highly refined and organic chemicals and substances and the gum products subgroup. In this video we will focus on the subgroup highly refined organic chemicals and substances. However, keep in mind that the processes for the two subgroups are very similar. When performing an assessment of a highly refined organic chemicals and substances, it is critical that you are able to determine if the product is classified as a highly refined organic chemical and substance. These products are stipulated in the biosecurity legislation under Section 33 of the Prohibited and Conditionally Non-Prohibited Goods Determination 2016. Some examples of these are on the slide. You'll find a link to the approved products list in BICON. If you are unable to determine whether the product fits into this category from the documentation provided, AEPCOMM should not be used to lodge the import declaration, and the documentation should be sent to the department for assessment. The products or any derivatives must not be destined to be used for animal consumption, veterinary use, fertiliser, or bioremedial agents. Let's have a look at an example. You have an LCL consignment of mung bean starch from Thailand, tariff 1108110028. You are in possession of a valid non-commodity documentation, a manufacturer's declaration that complies with BICON and the MinDocs requirements policy, and commercial documents clearly identifying the product as mung bean starch for human consumption. Let's go to the approved commodities and related information for Class 19.2 Approved Arrangements webpage. You need to refer to the highly refined organic chemicals and substances subgroup. This section specifies that the BICON case containing in-scope pathways for this commodity subgroup is the highly refined organic chemicals and substances case. This information also states that this subgroup includes highly refined organic chemicals and substances not to be used for animal consumption, bioremedial agents or fertiliser, growing purposes or veterinary therapeutic use, as mentioned previously. This consignment fits into this description. Now we check the tariff is in scope of the approved arrangement. Yes, it is. It fits under 1108. Now let's go to the highly refined organic chemicals and substances BICON case to verify the import pathway is in scope of AEPCOMM and determine the AEPCOMM code to into the system. Please remember, AEPCOMM information is only visible through your AEPCOMM user account. We check the highly refined organic chemicals and substances list. Check. Starches are listed there. Now you would follow the import pathway by answering the import questions according to the scenario. The BICON offshore outcomes display the AEPCOMM code REL. This code needs to be entered against the relevant line in the AEP processing type field of the Integrated Cargo System, or ICS. When lodging the import declaration, you also need to ensure that your answer community protection profile questions in relation to the end use of the product accurately, as the appropriate answers will allow the system to process the declaration correctly through AEPCOMM. Once the lodgement is completed, and if the import declaration is not selected for a document assessment verification by the system, the Agriculture Import Management System, or AIMS, will generate a release notice and email it to your company's nominated address. If you have any AEP-related questions, please contact AEP support at awe.gov.au. Okay, thank you very much for that one. I'm wanting to pass across to Angus. Have any questions popped up?
Yeah, I've got a few questions to answer. Again, Nick, first one here is, can I use AEPCOMM if I have a product containing gum as one of the ingredients? That is, if the product contains other ingredients as well. Answer to that question is no. Generally, will have to be a bulk product containing and classified under the tariffs which are in scope for gum products to be used on AEPCOMM. Otherwise, it'll be considered out of scope. The next question I have is, does a product have to be on the BICOM list to be able to lodge it through AEPCOMM? I assume it's relating to highly processed, highly refined organic chemicals. And the answer to that question is, yeah, that we have, for the highly refined organic chemicals, the product has to be listed on that approved list of products, which is listed in BICOM, for you to be able to lodge it on AEPCOMM. It's important that you have the documentary evidence to support that product being on that list. And when in instances where goods are subject to verification, you'll be required to provide that document to verify that the product is part of that list. And I've got one quick question here as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Is it possible to make an amendment to an AEP entry after it has been submitted and a direction issued, or will the amendment trigger document assessment with the department? At this point in time, any amendments which are deemed major will trigger the system to direct the goods to present documents to the department. At this stage, there are some amendments which are considered minor, and the system will handle those. We recently made a change to the AEP system where vessel changes were downgraded to a minor. They no longer cause the entry to be have that major amendment associated with it and present docs. So we are always looking to make those type of improvements, but yeah, any major amendment will trigger a presentation of documents.
Okay, Angus, thank you. That's a good touch on those questions coming through. We're still encouraging questions because we want to finish this program off with more questions coming in from all of you listening in. The next one we've got to go to is an update on the eCert. It's a fairly solid bit of information. So, Kym, over to you.
Thanks, Nick. We would like to use this webinar as an opportunity to provide an update on the progress we have made with electronic certification, or eCert. Many people on the line will be familiar with eCert for import. It is an electronic system that receives government-to-government generated phytosanitary and sanitary certificates. eCerts contain the same information as the paper certificates currently issued and are considered an original certificate. At the moment, we have an eCert exchange with Indonesia and New Zealand, but I'll go through that in more details on the next slides. The benefits of eCerts are that they cannot be lost in transit like paper certificates. They provide better assurance in regards to the authenticity of certificates, and they can be issued and replaced nearly instantly in a digital and consistent format. While eCerts and paper certificates will be issued in parallel in the initial stages of an exchange, eCert and paperless trading is internationally recognised as the future of government certification. So, how does this work for entries being lodged to the Department for assessment? It is a requirement of the Minimum Documentary and Import Declaration Requirements Policy that the eCert details must be entered in the ICS or third-party software where an eCert exchange has been established. The relevant electronic certificate type must be selected from the AEQUIS document type field. The eCert number must be entered into the AEQUIS document number field. This can be seen in the example on your screen. If recorded correctly, the eCert details will be integrated and matched in AIMS, and our departmental officers will be able to view the certificate for assessment. Be careful though, if the certificate number is entered in the incorrect format or is not entered at all, our officers will not be able to access the eCert and will request an ICS amendment. For AEPCOMM accredited persons, Condition 19 of the requirements and conditions for Class 19.2 policy also stipulates that eCerts must be entered where an eCert exchange is available. AEPCOMM persons must also retain documentary evidence of the government certificate used for assessment and present this to the department if selected for AEP random verification. A non-compliance may be issued in accordance with the compliance classification policy if the eCert is not entered or documentary evidence is not provided. As many of you will know, we have a reliable eCert exchange with New Zealand Ministry for Primary Industries, or NZMPI. This includes eCerts for both phytosanitary and sanitary certificates, but excludes zoo sanitary certificates issued for live animals and reproductive materials at this stage. As mentioned earlier, paperless trading is internationally recognised as the future for government certification. In addition to this, and as a result of the COVID pandemic, many countries, including New Zealand, are experiencing difficulties in issuing and sending original paper certificates. Countries have been encouraged to utilise eCert where possible to help alleviate the pressures associated with paper certificates. As a result, we are currently working with New Zealand to transition our eCert exchange for phytosanitary and sanitary certificates to remove the original paper certificate later this month. At this stage, the proposed date for transition to paperless is the 31st of August 2020. This will be the first paperless exchange implemented for eCert imports and will be a highlight of our progress with eCert this year. So what does transitioning to paperless trading for eCert mean? This transition to paperless trading for eCert with New Zealand means that New Zealand MPI will no longer issue original paper phytosanitary or sanitary certificates. We should highlight that this transition to paperless trade only involves phytosanitary and sanitary certificates. All other import documentation for imports from New Zealand will continue to be issued and submitted as normal. So what does this mean for lodgements that have eCerts associated? For entries being lodged to the Department for assessment, all that will be required is the certificate number. The New Zealand exporter will provide all brokers and importers with a certificate number instead of the original certificate. This will no longer be issued. This certificate number must be entered into the ICS or third-party software with relevant lodgements, as is the current process. A copy or extract of the certificate can be provided by the New Zealand exporter if requested. For entries lodged under AEPCOMM, suitable documentary evidence will still be provided for accredited persons. However, the process is slightly different for phytosanitary and sanitary certificates. For phytosanitary certificates, you will continue to be provided with a copy of the phytosanitary certificate for assessment. Phytosanitary certificates may be required for goods such as timber, cane, rattan, willow, wicker, permitted plant fibres, prefabricated buildings, onions and shallots. For sanitary certificates, you will be provided with an extract of the sanitary certificate for assessment. This looks slightly different to the sanitary certificate you currently assess, but contains identical information. Sanitary certificates may be required for goods such as dairy or finfish for human consumption. We will publish communication materials shortly which will show you examples of what this copy and extract will look like. New Zealand exporters will be informed that AEPCOMM accredited persons require documentary evidence. However, you may need to specifically request this be provided with other import documentation. New Zealand exporters will have access to obtain the copy or extract directly from the New Zealand eCert systems and provide this to you. You will then be able to use the certificate number provided on the copy or extract to include with your lodgement. This documentary evidence, the copy or the extract, has been approved by the Department as suitable alternative evidence for assessment under AEPCOMM. This copy or extract must be retained as documentary evidence where required for assessments and will be accepted when presented as part of AEP random verification. Please remember, a non-compliance may be issued if the eCert is not entered or documentary evidence is not provided. Communication material will be distributed to inform both staff and industry of the new process and will include examples of what the copies extracts look like. So that is a new process for New Zealand paperless. Finally, what else is on the horizon for eCert over the next few years? Our eCert exchange with Indonesia's Ministry of Agriculture, Agency for Agricultural Quarantine, remains unchanged. We have an established exchange and eCert connection with Indonesia, and paper certificates will continue to be issued in parallel with eCert. In terms of future projects, we are actively looking to expand the number of sanitary and phytosanitary eCert exchanges we have with other countries and overseas government agencies. This includes establishing eCert exchanges via the International Plant Protection Convention, IPPC, ePhyto Hub. This will be another huge milestone for eCert for imports. We will keep industry informed with progress. Further information and updates on eCert for imports can be found on the department's webpage at www.agriculture.gov.au/eCert imports. Alternatively, you can also contact the eCert Imports team using the email ecertimports@awe.gov.au.
Kym, thank you for that. So I just want to check, are there any questions that we've got that are arisen out of that?
I have one here, Nick.
Okay.
So we've got someone who's asked, how do I know what format to enter the New Zealand certificate number in? So there's information on the department's website, including a help card, which explains all the details of how you enter the certificate number. So that's the best bet. The website is www.agriculture.gov.au/eCert imports.
Okay, we've got about another 2 minutes max. I just wanted to check, 31st of August 2020 is when New Zealand goes paperless.
Yep,
so we've got to be set up and ready for that. Angus, I'll check for you for 2 last questions. Have you got anything up there?
I've got one from Travis here. Will AEPCOMM be updated to include break bulk, unfinished timber out of New Zealand? That's the answer to that one is yes. Most pathways from New Zealand are now available through AEPCOMM, including the break bulk pathways. And if you just refer to BICON and the new webpage, it should be able to, you should be able to see what pathways are available. Just one quick comment from Chris then. Will there be any service charges for AEPCOMM entries that go REL upon entry? All AEPCOMM lodgements are subject to that $18 AEPCOMM charge, so that's an answer to that one is yes. Thanks, Nick, back to you.
Righto, so a reminder to the participants that this is a mandatory CBC session. If you are an accredited person from the AEPCOMM approved arrangements, therefore, there is an assessment component that you must complete by the 21st of September 2020 and prior to using the approved arrangements for any new commodities. The assessments will be available through your CBC provider. Thank you very much for your engagement today. It's been fairly fantastic. A lot of people, as I said at the beginning, well over 580 people have signed in today, and I think it's gone fairly well. Look forward to your commentary and your feedback, particularly around the tutorials. Let us know if they're worth pursuing. Thank you very much, and signing off here in Canberra.